by actually from a horrible event with my favorite Patrick Doyle, that being on different continents, the director and the composer became, that ain't going to happen again, because there was so much misunderstanding in files going back and forth that it became very clear. Patrick, you got to go to Heathrow right now and come to LA tomorrow, because he's not getting it. He's just not getting it. You need to walk him through the demos. Clearly, you guys have a shorthand where you don't have to sit in the same room. So that's kind of wonderful.
I find that I can communicate and organize my thoughts more efficiently if I'm writing them out. I'm a more erudite writer than I am a speaker. And so most of our communication is in emails and lately text messages, which has become almost alarming, the amount that we've collaborated via text messages on the most recent scores. But there is always value, at least once on every movie, I think, where we do get together, and whether we're listening to cues or just talking through the movie. I hesitate to call it a spotting session, because sometimes the music's already there, or sometimes it's not, but we're just watching it together, and that is a good experience to have. Even if music doesn't come into play at all, just sitting in a room with someone and watching the movie with them, in whole or in part, is very valuable. So that always happens at least once, but beyond that, it's been remarkably smooth to just have that sort of transcontinental, sometimes psychic link that allows us to collaborate without ever sharing physical space.
In this case, it's trans Los Angeles County. Speaking of the spotting session, with such a long history, do you spot the films together, or do you just send a movie to Daniel and he comes back with, I think we should put music here?
I think it's more of that. Like I send, in most cases, I think, I don't know, Daniel, how do I send movies to you? Do I send you the entire thing, or do I send you a reel at a time?
We've been going mostly, like, I feel like we have reached the version of it that we want it to be, which is you sending me as much of the movie as possible, and usually that's been the whole thing all at once, and with no temp music.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so rare.
That's been key to my process, not just in terms of music, but for the filmmaking itself. Is I always want the filmmaking to function on its own before music is introduced to it. I never want, sometimes music can be an incredible Band-Aid, and I certainly have taken advantage of that. Medical emergencies applies, it can provide, but I do want the movie to function soundly as possible before music gets introduced to it. And so I always cut without temp score first. And if with our studio, the movies we made with Disney, there's a process there that requires temp score to be added in, but that still happens after I've cut the scenes to make them function as well as they possibly can with no music, to feel as musical as they can without music. And I think that's one of the reasons why we then don't have to have a traditional spotting session, is because the film itself is sort of like explaining where it needs the music. Again, we're putting the onus on the movie rather than on ourselves. And I always do have ideas. Sometimes it's even in the script, that I'll say the music starts here and stops there. But but I'm never tied to that. I never feel married to that. And there are sequences in Green Knight that I always imagined without music, and I kept trying to make them work without music. But Daniel's perception of the movie always he always saw music in that place, and rightly so. And the movie rejected my attempts to remove score from those sequences.